I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. New Jersey Senators Bob Menendez and Cory Booker spoke at a Planned Parenthood rally at Rutgers on Monday. These remarks come in the wake of a leaked Supreme Court draft decision that could overturn Roe v. Wade. Menendez said that striking down federal abortion rights would attempt to, quote, erase a half a century of progress. Booker echoed Menendez and took the opportunity to criticize the GOP. He decried right-wing radicals who have made it their mission to, quote, strip power away from women. Here's more from the Democratic senators.
And the Chancellor, who is here with us, Nancy Cantor, for your unwavering commitment to justice and equality and for hosting us today. Thank you to Rutgers and also to organizations like Planned Parenthood, the New Jersey ACLU, Garden State Equality, and my colleagues who are on the stage with me from both the federal as well as our state government. Your leadership and advocacy has never been more important as we work to defend the reproductive rights of women and girls all across our nation. It's an honor to join you here at my alma mater of Rutgers University Law School, where I learned in law school that Roe versus Wade is the law of the land of the United States, and to reaffirm our support for reproductive choice and health. As many of you know, last January marked 49 years since Roe versus Wade was decided. 49 years since bodily autonomy and the fundamental right for women to make their own medical decisions became the law of the land. 49 years since abortion care was brought out of the shadows and into safe and legal clinics administered by professional health care providers like Planned Parenthood. 49 years. Think about it for a moment. For nearly half a century, Roe versus Wade has been decided, affirmed, and reaffirmed as a legal bedrock of constitutional right to privacy. In doing so, it has extended to generations of American women the fundamental right to choose. And as a result, when women in America face one of the hardest decisions of their lives, they have the peace of mind knowing that the decision is between them and their doctor and their faith, no one else. So let us be abundantly and unapologetically clear. Roe versus Wade is the law of the land. It is well established precedent. And if you're the Supreme Court of the United States, the institution entrusted by the Constitution to uphold the law and rights for every person in the nation, you cannot strike down 40 majority opinion, one that is filled with flawed justifications and racist and sexist assertions, and consider the matter settled. And they most certainly cannot strip the fundamental rights of half of the American population without a fight. And we are going to put up that fight. In 2006, when I was first appointed to the United States Senate, and I had to run later that year, one of the first votes that I was called to cast was on the question of a nominee to the Supreme Court of the United States. That was the nomination of now Justice Alito. He had a lot of support in New Jersey at that time. I had a lot of pressure on me to vote for Judge Alito. When we met in my office, I asked him to try to get his judicial philosophy, what is settled law? What is precedent? And he said to me, well, settled law is there's a case in controversy, it's been litigated, it's been decided, it's been affirmed, and maybe reaffirmed by the Supreme Court. I said, okay. So is Roe versus Wade settled law? And he looked at me and he said, oh, no. I said, no. I said, how is it that it's not settled law? And he said to me, well, it's still being litigated. I said, still being litigated because it's being litigated? You're saying it's not settled law? And he goes, well, there's a case in controversy. So I said to him, so if white supremacists now litigate Brown versus the Board of Education. Are you telling me that would not be settled law? And he gave me the most incredible answer. So I knew then that if I was to uphold my sacred trust to the people of New Jersey, I could not support a nominee who would be willing to take us back to a time and place none of us want to be. So I voted no, and I'm glad 17 years later that I voted no at that time against Justice Alito. In that very first floor speech, I announced my opposition. I said, it's not where you come from that matters, but where you will take the nation. Does the Supreme Court with Justice Alito take the nation forward, or does it move our nation backward? Well, that judgment 17 years ago was right. It's now clear what that answer is. It takes us backward, attempting to erase a half-century of progress. Overturning Roe versus Wade takes us back to a place no one wants to go to, a dark place in history that would open the doors to overturning settled decisions not beyond Wade. It jeopardizes fundamental rights like the right to gay marriage, to private consensual sex between adults, even contraception. It is an existential threat, not just to women, but to every American. After all, if precedent is no longer important, then nothing is sacred. Voting rights, civil rights, LGBTQI rights, and on and on. I, for one, refuse to accept this version of our country. I refuse to go back to the days when women, particularly low-income women and women of color, are subjected to government intrusion by male politicians who think they know it best. I refuse to go back to the days when abortion was illegal and therefore unregulated, when thousands of women a year were hospitalized and even died as a result of unsafe procedures. Because make no mistake, banning abortions does not stop abortions from happening. It just stops safe ones from being carried out. Ask anyone who remembers what it was like before Roe. Back then, a pregnancy might mean the risk of losing your job. It meant dreams deferred for young women across the country. When women's bodies are policed, abortions are carried out in back alleys, in hushed tones, and shame instead of safety. So let it ring out loud and clear. No vamos para atrás. We are not going back. We cannot and we will not. We are going to march forward and do what a determined group of wronged individuals always does. We are going to fight. We are going to reaffirm that abortion is an integral part of women's health care, that women deserve to know the full range of options when it comes to something as personal as the decision to start a family. We're going to call out the hypocrisy of Republicans who call themselves pro-life, but refuse to fund maternal care, child care, family leave, access to health care, education, and will never prioritize equal pay. I'm talking about Republicans who would force women to give birth even in the case of rape and incest, while opposing policies that benefit mothers. Republicans who, after waging a decades-long war on the rights of 169 million women in our country, are now more focused on a leak than on the consequences of their actions. My friends, this is the dog catching the bus. They are on the wrong side of a position that 70% of Americans support, and that is that Roe versus Wade should remain the law of the land. And so this week, when we return to the Senate, we will proudly vote for the Women's Health Protection Act to codify Roe versus Wade into law once and for all. We've done it here in New Jersey thanks to the leadership of Governor Murphy, but it's time to do it at the federal level. If the court does strike down Roe, if that's the final decision of the court, the Senate has to act and step into the breach. We will not go back to a patchwork of laws that leaves our people in other states behind. We will not stand by and let this country's health care system further be split between the wealthy and the working poor. Why? because the freedom to make medical decisions with your health care provider belongs to all Americans. It's a right whether you live in Nebraska or in New Jersey. It's a right to privacy that is the sacred cornerstone for all Americans in different iterations, and we will not be silenced as some seek to strip it away. So today, let us say with one voice that reproductive rights are human rights, that an attack on the rights of women and girls is an attack on all of us. Let us keep faith of those who are with us today, who have been advocating for women and girls long before this draft opinion was made public. Let us stand in solidarity with the women of Mississippi, Texas, Oklahoma, and Florida who will bear the brunt of that decision if that's what's made. Let us stand in solidarity with the health care providers like the Jackson Women's Health Care as well. And let us never lose sight of our goal, which is the right to reproductive choice is an ingrained right on which everything else stands. I stand here as your senator, as someone who is tasked by all of you with protecting the constitutional right to privacy and a woman's right to choose. But on a personal level, I stand here as a father and a grandfather of 3 beautiful girls. I have 3 precious granddaughters who are at risk of growing up with fewer rights than my daughter Alicia had. You have my commitment for them, for your kids, for every woman in our state and in our nation. I will not yield, I will not stop, and I will not give in until the protections enshrined by Roe versus Wade are enshrined in the law of the United States of America. We are not going back. And in this fight, a member of the Judiciary Committee and eloquent spokesman on this issue, Senator Cory Booker.
Good morning. All right. Listen, it is good to be home, not just in my home city. Long commute to get here, about half a mile. But it's great to be in New Jersey. I'm standing on this stage with 2 extraordinary women who represent our state. Assemblywoman Timberlake and great Senator Teresa Ruiz. I'm proud that I have a lieutenant governor like Sheila Oliver. I'm proud that we have a governor like Phil Murphy that believe in women's rights, that they believe ultimately that we empower women, that we strengthen access to health care and child care and preschool, that have made this state a beacon and example of what true freedom is about, not stripping rights away from people, but making sure you have more rights to access to health care, more rights to access to child care, more rights. I am proud of our state, but I am deeply troubled by the leaked report that came, or the leaked opinion that came from the Supreme Court. For almost 50 years, we have been a nation that enshrined what is our common values, the ideal of freedom, ideal that one of the most sacrosanct things is the sanctity to control your own destiny, to have autonomy over your own person. And yet we have now seen a leaked decision indicating where the Supreme Court will go, that is taking us back to an era when women did not have equality, when a woman was not allowed to control her own body. And we didn't get here by accident. There have been right-wing radicals that for almost 50 years have made it their overriding purpose to strip power away from women. This is not just about the horror of Roe v. Wade being pulled down. It is about people that want to take away power and freedom from women in America. We are about to go to a perverse Handmaid's Tale reality, where we have a nation that a woman who is a survivor of sexual violence will be told just hours after her attacker finishes their violence that they have to bring a pregnancy to term. This is a reality that is the result of radical folks who believe we should live in a nation that does not uphold Roe v. Wade, that eliminates abortion under all circumstances for all women everywhere. And for us to think that this is just about states' rights, or the 13 states, or soon possibly 25 to 26 states that have banned abortion, it's not. The agenda of this radical right people is to eliminate the right to abortion in every state in our nation. And so today I stand firmly with all those gathered here to say no, we will defend Roe. To say no, we will defend Roe. To say no, we will defend Roe. And if you think I'm wrong, that this is not about women, just think about this for a second. If you think this is not about stripping power from women, about subjugating women, then just think about this. If those on the radical right say this is about life, well, why do they fight us to provide health care, access for women? If you think this is about the radical right just wanting to affirm life, then think about this. Why are we the nation, richest in the world, that leads developed nations in maternal mortality and infant mortality? Why do we have a fight every time we are trying to empower women, women's health care, with people who want to subject them and oppress them? This comes down to fundamental ideas of freedom and equality and opportunity that we all share. If this was about life, then we would be elevating our nation with doula care for women, postnatal care for women, for affordable child care and affordable education, universal access to high-quality preschool. Things like the child tax credit. You know why? Because a woman who chooses to have a child in America has a 400% more likelihood to fall below the poverty line. If this is about empowering women and affirming life, then we would give women more access to contraceptive care. Then we would have science-based sex education. There are ways that we can move as a nation that empower women, that lower the rates of unwanted pregnancy, that affirm life and health and well-being, but this is not about that. So don't get me wrong. We must preserve Roe v. Wade. Now, I tell you, there's a lot of hurt right now, a lot of fear and a lot of worry, and we should talk about that. There are women all over America who wonder, how could we be going back to an era where women were denied the sanctity of their body, the freedom to make their own choices, to rely on their doctors or their faith to guide their own way? How could we be going back? I know there are people that are hurting today that see this not just as an attack on women, but an attack on low-income women and minority women. I know there are folks that are hurting today, so I want to tell you right now the truth. This is not going to stop just by the vote we're about to take in Congress. I am so proud that I serve with a senior senator whose whole career has been not just about defending women's rights, but fighting for more equality. And he and I will proudly walk down into the well of the Senate this week and vote for the Women's Health Protection Act. But I want to be clear with everybody, it will most likely fail. But we cannot let temporary defeat undermine our determination to achieve true and lasting justice. We may face a defeat, but we will not be defeated. There's an amazing woman who fought for over 50 years for the ideals of freedom named Ella Baker. She stood for civil rights and for women's rights. She stood and fought for equality. And there's a song by one of my favorite groups, Sweet Honey in the Rock, that's called Ella's Song, named after her. And I want to call on everyone who's hurting today, who may feel weary today, who may not understand why, when we fought so hard for Roe v. Wade in the first place, how can they be about to strip it away for our nation? How can radical right folks who do not want to see equality or empowerment, how can they win? I want to tell you now, we've got a battle ahead. We've got to bring our power and our peace to begin to protest and push for change. And so I tell you, if you're like me and you believe in freedom, lean on the words of that song. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it's won. We will not rest. We will not stop. We will not stop standing for freedom and liberty and empowerment and equality. Those are the bedrock values of our nation, and no Supreme Court can ever undermine the truth of America. We are a freedom-loving nation, and today, when there's a threat across America, we will overcome. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to bring up a true champion of freedom, a champion of equality, a champion of health care, our great Congresswoman, Mikey Sherrill.